Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn webinar, Increased Warehouse Productivity with Outbound Warehouse Request, brought to you by ArcherPoint and Lanham Associates. Managing a warehouse or being a system administrator is fraught with challenges. There are so many moving parts and often conflicting priorities to balance. Planning and managing a warehouse actively and accurately is key. Lanham Associates Outbound Warehouse Request, or OWR, has been the gold standard to plan and execute warehouse activity for Dynamics NAV advanced warehouse configurations for years. However, what you may not realize is that OWR capabilities have been expanded. Today, Lanham's OWR supports even basic warehouse configurations and can also be installed as a standalone module independent of Lanham's ACE warehousing. To explain the benefits of Lanham OWR, please welcome Jim Augenstein. Jim has been the channel manager at Lanham Associates for over 8 years. Prior to that, he was with AWR as a senior solution consultant and has spent his career in large part helping companies improve their warehousing, supply chain, and logistics operations. We're thrilled to have Jim with us today. So let's get started. Jim, over to you.
Thanks very much, Suzanne. Thanks everybody for taking time to join us today on this beautiful summer, or almost beginning of summer afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. I'm going to jump right into it with our slides, and then also mention, of course, Mark is on the Q&A panel. If a question does pop up during, please go ahead and type it in. And then when I get done with what I've got planned, I'll go through and look at the questions and see if there's some that might be relevant to the entire group. So I'm always time pressed to get everything that I want to say done in an hour. I think I know most of you that are on here, and you probably know that I could talk about this stuff on and on. So I will jump right in and get started. First of all, there's a couple of new faces out there. So Lanham Associates, we are really the leaders of supply chain execution and solutions for Dynamics Nav. From my perspective, we've been doing this for 20 some odd years, and everything we do somehow relates to boxes. Today, we're really focusing in on the outbound warehouse request application, and although there are, of course, others that you can see on our slide. A quick announcement: for those of you that are end users, we are on October the 15th. We're adding in a full day of what we're calling a supply chain intensive summit, and it's a one-day free event for customers prior to the users group in Phoenix this year. You can see the list of topics there. The agenda is still, of course, being firmed up. Definitely, these topics will be addressed, and so please join us for that. Registration is, you can see on the bottom there, Lauren P., and that's Lauren Penson, who's our awesome events director, and she can help you with the registration process. Okay, our topic today is outbound warehouse request. And when I created the session description, I included kind of 3 bullets. We always like to do things in 3s. And so we're going to talk about outbound warehouse requests, unique capabilities, what's included by the different versions of warehousing that might be employed, and discuss the productivity gains. I think those will become obvious. And I really want to focus in on those 3. At the end of this, if you don't think I hit the mark, please let me know. It irritates me when I see a webinar description and then the actual webinar matches nothing like what the description was. So I've tried to really take care today to present it with these 3 goals in mind. And that's what we'll do. So to start out with, what is outbound warehouse request? Well, first of all, it's been around for a while, and I really believe that besides having very unique capabilities, it by itself is a very unique application. There's nothing like it out there, unless of course your partner is customized something, but as far as from an ISV, there really is nothing like it. Very simply stated, outbound warehouse request is a centralized page form, if you're on older versions, a centralized page to manage the outbound order process. Now, I realize that sounds pretty simple, but there are generally always a lot of elements that come into that. There are other methods that can be used, but Outbound Warehouse Request was designed to do away with all those other methods and combine this into one single application. And it's unique in the sense of that there is really nowhere else to go to see all of the outbound activities that we need to process in our warehouse. So you can see here in the screenshot, I've got sales orders. There's also an outbound transfer down there. And if I had any return to vendors, anything that needs to leave my warehouse is there. All right. So that's the first thing. I can view and drill down into that. And that by itself would be great, just to see all the things that I need to work on. But obviously it does a lot more. Now I can't cover all the nuances of Outbound Warehouse Request in an hour. I'm going to try and focus in on the ones that really would add the most productivity gains for most customers. So the first thing is, where do I start? On a Monday morning, as kind of we said, if you've got e-commerce orders that have been received over the weekend or EDI orders that have come in, where do I start from a warehouse manager's perspective to plan the activity and to get people started in the warehouse? And the first and the easiest, I think, is to look at the possibilities of filtering my orders and getting started on the basis of those filters. So do I have any particularly priority customers? For example, you can see here, I've got a few that are selected. These are some priority customers that I know we got to get started on those first. Do I have any EDI orders? If I am in the EDI world, do I need to focus on getting my EDI orders processed? Are we in a priority shipping situation where I've got some overnights or second days that we know need to be processed and delivered from the warehouse to an earlier truck, for example? Do I have LTL orders? Typically, LTL orders will take a longer time to pull. They're generally larger, although not necessarily. You could have a single piece of equipment that goes LTL, but do I have to focus in on those? And so on and so on. So the first thing we want to be able to do is to find those kinds of things, those kinds of orders that meet various criteria, and to prioritize the work in the warehouse to get started on those particular activities. Obviously, you can see here there's quite a few columns in my Outbound Warehouse Request screen, and I can filter on pretty much any of those. And it might be convenient to right-click filter and use that standard nav functionality, but I'm going to show you something else that makes this even better. Scope and context of the first part of this conversation is we're working in a warehouse that is what we would generally define as full advanced warehousing. And if I were to look on the location page on the warehouse tab, you'll see there's a checkbox there in directed, put away, and pick. We will talk about it in a few minutes. We'll talk about using Outbound Warehouse Request in an environment that is not a directed put away and pick warehouse. And that's really kind of the newest thing. I forget exactly what the date was, but it was last year when Mark, who's our product manager for this particular application area, came up with a version of this that runs in less configurations, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to show a few features that exist in the whole enchilada. So directed, put away, and pick. All right, so I have to kind of pick and choose each time I do this because the list is lengthy. So I've got a slightly different list than I might normally cover for today. The first thing is, if you're using any kind of configuration in warehousing where I have a shipment and a pick, then I have to use the create the shipment process inside base nav, which is either from the outbound activity itself. There's an action create shipment. There is also a filter selection to grab source documents and then create shipments that way. And then I create the pick for those activities as well. So it's a two-step process. So in Outbound Warehouse Request, the first thing we do is we combine that into a single step. So we don't have to go through two of those. We talked about filters and selection of orders to process based on a multitude of criteria. We'll look at that. If you're using advanced warehousing, you'll know that we can create zones within the warehouse, and the zones can have a variety of properties associated with them that either allow or don't allow certain activity. And sometimes we may want to pick by different zones. I think the classic example here is I've got maybe not a lot of picking area, and yet I've got a product which needs a lot of picking space. So I might store that product in two different bins or multiple bins, and I might define my warehouse into different zones. And in the morning, I pick from the left-hand side, pick left, and deplete those pickable bins with inventory. And then in the afternoon, I will change over and pick from the right-hand set of picking bins and replenish my left-hand side. Or maybe I go for a couple of hours and piggyback back and forth. So there's a lot of reasons why you are using zones out there, but this enables us to create picks and observe that zone area. Detailed inventory status is really drilling down carefully into, again, this is an advanced warehouse where I may have bins and different bin types that are set up, bulk storage, quality control storage, manufacturing. And so I want to see exactly what is available based on the rules that exist within an advanced warehouse that allows me to pick only from pickable bins, or that enforces that I pick only from pickable bins. So if you're in a QC environment, you've got stuff coming off a production line, you've got the inventory in the location, but it's not pickable because it's in quality control. So it may look like I've got plenty of inventory, but in reality, it's not pickable. And we'll help look at that and make that determination. Maybe it then just takes a quick radio call to find out if something is going to be coming out of QC in time for you to ship certain orders based on what the business rules might exist for that particular customer. In the normal course of events, when we create pick tickets and shipments, now we'll start with the oldest order number first, assuming, of course, you're using a number series, and create the shipments and picks in that order. Well, if you've got some prioritization that you would have for certain customers, Outbound Warehouse Request allows me to prioritize those orders and then create the picks using that prioritization. This is key if I have scarce inventory, certain priority customers that we have to make sure receive the first amount, and then as we get further on down, other customers may or may not get a pick if the inventory is not available. But this gives us a chance to create that prioritization ourselves. Working individually or by a group, I really kind of actually should have left that bullet off. That really more applies if you're using our ACE warehousing, which is our wireless solution. So that was my oversight. So that isn't really there. And there are some additional picking methods that have been created that can apply, as well as to create picks in batches. So these are all designed to help streamline the workflow and make it more efficient. So I'm going to go into Nav, and we're going to look at a few of those now. So let me just transition over here to Nav, and we'll fire up Outbound Warehouse Request. And we're not doing too badly on time. So here's Outbound Warehouse Request in a live. This is 2017. Of course, we are released in 2018, and will be released in Business Central soon, if that's of interest to you. And I suspect when fall rolls around and the next release of Business Central comes out, will be released in that as well. But right now I'm working in the 2017 environment. You can see I've got some old orders here. And the first step is the filtering process. Of course, I can look and imagine if you've got 200 orders, they obviously aren't all going to be on the screen here like I have in my simplified demo environment. And so I may not be able to see all the orders. So the first thing might be to apply some filters to work on a subset. Now, I'm going to digress for just a second and talk about those of you that might be in an advanced warehouse configuration. You know that there are some rules around what is available and what is not available. If I have inventory that's not in pickable locations, generally speaking, I don't get a shipment and a pick created for that inventory. And then it's also possible that we have customers that are ship complete customers and some that are allowing a partial shipment. All those rules need to be observed. And again, in this case, if I'm looking at a large number of orders, it may be nice to introduce some automation into this process, so that what I'm left with here in outbound warehouse requests from a view perspective are those orders which didn't meet some criteria. And that automation can be done. The job queue makes it possible with a little bit of code to automatically create shipment and picks for orders that meet a particular criteria. For example, if you've got a customer that's ship complete, all the inventory is available, when the order gets released from sales order, a little bit of code can pick that up with the job queue, automatically create the shipment and pick, and you're good. So then what you left here is orders that maybe didn't meet that, and then you've got to make some choices. So if you like this, you can still leverage the code that exists, create some automation around it, and then we drill down into those that don't meet that criteria. But for now, I'm looking at my orders and somewhat manually making a decision on what the next step might be. But so from a filter perspective, we have right here in the filter request code, I'm going to open this one up and we'll edit this one. Now, what we have here is a list of fields similar to other areas inside Nav, where we have filters that we can predefine and then use them over and over again. We're essentially looking at, for the most part, all of the information that comes from the header of the outbound document. So you can see here, I've got some choices. This is an EDI order. Of course, this would mean you're using Lanham EDI out of the box, but you could probably configure this for another EDI solution as well. There's bound to be a flag on an order which indicates that it's EDI. Do I have my eShip agent, a shipping agent, for example? I mentioned LTL. Do I have a shipping agent that defines which my LTL orders are, and so on and so on. In fact, you can see here in my list, we have quite a few that have been created. Here's my LTL order. So here I'm looking on a standard nav filter for anyone that's in my demo data, Conway, Yellow, or Roadway. Those are my LTL carriers. So I think you can see how these can be leveraged. And once I make a choice, we'll choose the LTL filter, for example, then you'll see that my list of orders then here, or outbound activity, is reduced for that meet that filter criteria. Now, for the most part, we're looking at header information, although there are a couple of line values here. Here's a line date filter where I would look at the line dates on the sales order lines. For example, if you are in your environment, if you create the same item on multiple lines on an order, but have different shipment dates, then we can look and only create shipments and picks for the inventory that falls up to that line date filter. And that's a standard date. I could do 7 days. That's a standard nav filtering that we're using. If everything that meets within the shipment date of the next 7 days would then fall into that criteria. And when I create the shipment and picks, then it would be created. So these filters then can be predefined and then really limit the amount of activity that I have to look at first. I'm going to go back to gold all here so I can see everything in my gold location. All right. And then if I right click here, and you can see that there are additional columns which I don't have exposed for this morning, but there are additional columns, of course, that can be exposed. And generally, those are also filterable on the outbound request filter code. So those are all predefined. So warehouse manager comes in Monday morning. First thing you want to do is look at my EDI orders. I pull this open. I go to EDI orders only. Where is that? Oh, right in front of my face. Oh, I didn't create one for EDI orders. But let's go back to the LTL. I pull that one if that's my EDI orders. and then I get started on those. And so the next step then is to highlight those 2 orders and say, okay, go ahead and create the pick. And that's the most basic illustration of the workflow here, is to create the shipment in pick. Now, once I've done that, and we'll do that, and let's go back now to Gold All again. So now you can see over here in these columns, I've got a shipment, I've got a pick. So I know that those have been, those are ready to go out to the next step. Now, if you're using, obviously with my wireless warehousing, ACE warehousing, they're all exposed to head-on and such. But if you're not in that environment, then you would potentially print the pick tickets, and now those can get started. Or if you're using another wireless solution, they would be exposed and available to that wireless solution as well. So then you might say, okay, I've got my LTL. Now let's go to my EDIs. Okay, so I didn't create a filter for my EDIs here, but I can also use standard nav filtering, and I can say filter for that. So now I can go here and create my shipments and picks from my EDI orders. Well, this was an LTL order, so it already has that. And so I could then highlight here the next one and say create pick. And so now I've got my EDI orders underway, right? So you can see that through a series of filters, and I can progress through and get my activity created. Now, in this case, these are all partial. So if I don't have enough inventory, that's okay. We're going to at least ship a partial. If I did have one which was a ship complete customer only, I would see that. Just instead of saying partial, would say complete. And up here where I say, hey, acknowledge the shipping advice on the order, then I would acknowledge those 2. And so if I didn't have enough inventory in pickable locations, then I would not get a shipment and pick created for that order. So then I can drill down and look a little further and see what the next step is. Now, the next step could very well that I do a replenishment if I've got in bulk storage or not. So it just depends on what your configuration might be, what those might be. These filters become really a very powerful and key starting point. Now I'm going to play with these orders a little bit, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to delete these. This is not something that you would do in normal processing. It's just something that that's there for, although it's there in the official release. I use it mostly for demos, so I can reuse the orders and play around a bit. There is a flag, of course, which allows that or not based on your user. So, all right, so that's filtering using my predefined filter codes, and that alone is pretty powerful. But I've mentioned earlier about the concept of the way Nav Advanced Warehousing is defined, and that is to allow inventory in different bin types, bulk storage and such, which means that when I create a shipment and the pick, I need to have inventory in pickable bins for me to do that. And so again, if I've got 200 orders and I want to see which ones I can do, obviously I could, and if you look down here, you can see the statistics on my order, and then you can see that I can partially ship this. Well, doing this order by order is somewhat tedious, of course. So there is another really nice feature. I'm going to highlight some orders here, and this feature is called my action entries. Now the action entries, and here in my directed put away and picked location, we're looking down at the bin type. I will tell you, and I'll repeat it again, but for lesser configurations of warehousing, we're looking at the total location because we don't have bin types. So we'll look at the total location for these action entries. For this gold location, it's a fully directed put away and pick location. So here I have some statistics that report or that are going to help me make the determination on whether or not this order can be shipped complete, observing a variety of factors. Is there enough inventory? Is the customer shipped complete? And all of that. And so what we'd like to do is let NAV do the heavy lifting, or let Outbound Warehouse Request do the heavy lifting, so we're not looking through an order on an order by order basis. So for example, if I select a group of orders, and in this case, I'm looking at all of my orders, and I say, show me all those for which I have available inventory. Well, you can see here now in my action code, with the exception of this one order, I have inventory that is available in pickable bins for all of that, for all of those orders. Now, I want to be clear on one thing here. This does not iterate down from the first order and say, do I have enough inventory available? Yes. And then go to the next order and say, oh, did I steal some for the first order? Do I still have enough inventory? This is not that iteration. That happens when we create picks. If I do run out of inventory, then the pick will either not get created for that item or not get created at all if it's a ship complete customer. This is just looking at kind of in a vacuum. So all of these potentially are available. You may now have another set of priorities that you want to create, which will then kind of consume that scarce inventory in pickable bin. So for now, these are all potentially shippable. And here I have another one which says, hey, you've got a movement required. And so that action entry was show me where the inventory that's available in my location is greater than what's in pickable bins. So that means I've got it somewhere in the warehouse, but I may need to do a movement to get that inventory down. And you can see here that a move is required. So the warehouse manager might come in first thing in the morning, maybe do no filtering, and just see what came over the weekend and see what do I need to replenish first. Maybe you've got a replenishment shift that comes in before the regular pickers come in. So I can quickly see all of those, and then I can right-click filter, and then I have the ability to go in and to create the movements. For those orders, I go up here to a thing that we call multiple statistics. And now up here, I've got two choices. I've got a movement and I've got a replenishment, all right? So this does, those two activities require a little bit of understanding of how advanced warehousing is configured. But essentially, those are both activities that say, go get something from bulk storage and take it down to a pickable location, all right? That pickable location can be either a fixed bin for that item, or it can be a staging area. But some of this would require that you're using ACE warehousing for them all to work together completely. If you're just using outbound warehouse requests, then you're going to be able to get a replenishment, but not necessarily a simple movement. So that's one possibility using the action entry. And there is a great document that we have that defines what each one of these do. And now with 2017 and forward, and with our release, I believe it's 1.5.10, or maybe it's 09, we have the tooltip, which will tell you exactly what is happening if I were to choose that particular action entry. I'm going to clear these out. And take that filter off. All right. And let me clear my action entries. Okay. So that's what we use the action entries for. So first of all, if you look at the filters, and then you look at action entries, you really now have refined what I need to get started with if that's your primary process or primary function that you've got to try and improve upon. The next one is, and I like this one, I call this my end of the day low-hanging fruit. And so here I have action entries looking for items or orders that have just a single item on it by themselves. So got an hour left of the day, maybe your cycle time is on an order is about 25 minutes from pick to pack to ship, and you want to try and get everything you can done by the rest of the day. So I can go here and I can look and say, hey, show me everything that's available. And I only want to see orders that have a single item on it. So when I choose that, now you'll see that these two orders pop up. They only have that item on there. And so I can probably get those out very, very quickly. If you had an order that had 15 items, maybe that takes longer to pick than you've got remaining in your shift. And so this is a nice way to just get a little bit more productivity out of your warehouse by just looking for the single items only. And then, of course, the next thing is to go in here and to to create the pick. All right. Okay, so those are my two favorite functions, and those two by themselves would deliver a tremendous amount of efficiency for you. But there are others. And down here, I want to cover a couple ones that I don't necessarily always talk about, and that is the warehouse activity group and batch sizing. So it could be that I want to print pick tickets and print them by batch, and then a worker will grab just a batch of picks. This allows me to kind of limit the amount of activity that a single worker is going to have, and still accomplish spreading the workload around. So I'm allowed to do that by creating different batch sizes, and throw a couple check boxes on here, which will combine picks into a certain batch size. So with those orders selected here, if I go up to create pick and that batch size set, now you'll see that what we get is one shipment, one pick, but I'm combining two orders into that. So this is a combination of batch size. And then if I printed those out, of course, each one could be its own page. And then this means that someone can come up and grab and work on a couple orders. You would determine how many you want in a batch by changing that number. Now let's go back to Outbound Warehouse Request Filter Code. I'm going to open this up. And you can see here that Warehouse Activity Set is a group, is also a tab that's on my filter. So if I were to choose this, and let's put a 5 in here and say, okay. And now I'll refresh my filter. I'll go this and then go back to here. Now you'll see that down here, my warehouse batch size has been in fact set. So this could be a standard business process. Create that filter, standard batch size, choose that filter, and then go off and create the appropriate shipments and picks for that. So as we drill down into this, you begin to see all the possibilities that we have. All right, I'm going to change back to slides for just a second. Actually, I don't have to change. I just go up here. Now, I want to talk about kind of what's new, and that's the release that we have, which allows us to use outbound warehouse requests in a non-directed put away in pick. So if you've chosen a different shipping solution, if you've chosen a different wireless warehousing solution, and you're not ready or have not defined the need to go to directed put away and pick, you can still use outbound warehouse requests in a certain configuration. The configurations are set to at least require that we get entries into a new ledger that we call the warehouse item ledger, or the warehouse entry ledger. And so really, really basic configurations, meaning no checkboxes here. Outbound warehouse request is not going to work for you. But for other configurations, it is. I chose this one, required shipment, required pick, and bin mandatory, because it seems like this is the next configuration that I come across most often in my sales activities with partners and customers. It seems like this is the one that they want to use. So they're not ready for directed put away and pick for whatever reason, but they still want a shipment, they still want a pick, and we still want to use bin. We could have a whole conversation about why that configuration makes sense, but we'll do that on a different day. But for now, this is what I want to focus in on. Now on this slide, and I apologize, I realize there's a lot of checkboxes, but we're going to keep this slide open for a little bit. The configuration that I'm referring to here is that one right here. So it's the warehouse pick, which implies the shipment, and using bins as well. So the features that would come in the configuration that we first talked about are all there. Obviously, there's quite a few features, and they all have checkboxes. That's the way outbound warehouse request was originally designed. But now when I step down, I do lose a few things. All right, and some of the things that I lose are different picking strategies that are employed in combination with either our wireless warehousing solution, or just base nav. So there are a few things that are not there, but note what is there, the big things. For example, the action codes are there, the ones that we just did. The outbound warehouse request filter codes. We just talked about batch combining. So there are quite a few checkboxes there that still offer a tremendous amount of functionality. When it comes to calculations of the inventory and do I have enough, again, we're looking at the whole location in a non-directed put away and pick warehouse. So in this configuration, and these, they kind of move down with fewer checkboxes as we go through the different columns here. We're looking at what's available in the entire location when we calculate those. Okay, but I still have the ability to create a priority picking strategy. I didn't talk about extra pick. Again, you can't cover every single feature in just a short hour. But an extra pick is an interesting one. In standard nav, if I create a shipment and then create a pick for an order, assuming that the order is a partial, and I can pick part of the inventory, it'll create a pick for all the inventory that's available. Well, if for some reason now inventory becomes available, it's not possible to create an additional pick while that shipment and pick still exists. So what we've done is we've added in the ability to create that extra pick. And I like Mark's example when I've talked with him about this. And Mark actually came from industry before joining Lanham, and this was a feature that they had available in their solution. And it makes perfect sense. Let's imagine that you've got a large order that you're pulling. Maybe it's an LTL, full truckload order. LTL or full truckload. And you know you've got a lot of the inventory available at the beginning of the day. It's going to take time, perhaps, to pull 10, 15 pallets worth of goods. But you know, in conversation with the production manager, that that midway through the day, we're scheduled to have inventory rolling off the production line for another item that you may need. Right, so it's convenient to go ahead and get started on that order, and then when the production or the items become available, now you create that extra pick. So the extra pick strategy is a nice strategy. Could also be for stock balancing transfers. If I'm same situation, if I know I've got inventory that will become available, then I can create that extra pick and get that processed at the same time. You'll note that that's available here on 2 of our configurations that are kind of lesser inventory. So when I look at what's not available in these lesser configurations, I really still believe strongly that there's quite a bit that we can still do even without using a directed put away and pick. Now, this next one, for those of you, I will kind of also give a nod toward the other Lanham products, eShip and Ace Warehousing. You can see here now that there are quite a few checkboxes, and all of these become available. For those of you that like objects in the still object world, standalone outbound warehouse request really is a much smaller footprint than in using Ace Warehousing with eShip. Obviously, there's quite a few objects there. Although in the extension world that's coming, that's not going to be as big of a deal. So there's still quite a bit there that gets added. And then when we take away some of our additional products, then we do begin to lose some of this additional activity. So obviously, we've designed outbound warehouse requests to work really nicely with Ace Warehousing and with eShip and add a bunch of additional features. If you see anything on this list that says, gee, I wonder what that is, please feel free to reach out to me. Let me know. And I'm happy to walk you through what some of those additional features are. So the goal for today was to kind of talk about all the efficiencies that potentially can be gained. We're actually doing pretty well on time. So if I can, let me go back into outbound warehouse requests and talk about a couple of the other things that we see here. Excuse me just a second. It is very possible that you'd have multiple dispatchers or warehouse managers, whatever the term is, that are working on orders, and trying to make decisions, again, down to this scarce inventory question. And so if you've got multiple people that would be potentially working, and let me delete my shipments and picks here. All right. If you've got multiple people that are working on them, maybe I've got some research to do. So if I look at my EDI orders here, we'll filter to, EDI filter. There we go, my EDI orders. And if I were to go highlight these 3 orders, and then I want to go up here and look at where do I stand, we call that statistics. Let me make this screen larger, and see, actually I'm in, oh, no, it looks like I've got something that's missing. So this is the sum total of those 3 orders of the items that I need. The outstanding quantity is what's on those orders, what I have available in pickable bins, right? You can see here I have a deficiency for this 74041 item. I can also see over here I've got something that is a column that says other available, and if I were to click on this hyperlink, you'll see here that my other available takes me into a bulk storage zone. So I can see I have some in bulk storage, typical, but I might have to do a replenishment for that. So at this point, I can decide, well, gee, I know, let's also further assume that this is a ship complete customer. Since it's EDI, we don't want to charge back, but I've got some research I want to do. I don't want someone to create shipments and picks for this just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to Actions, and I'm going to go Set Responsible, and I'm going to say that I am the responsible person working on this. So when I say Action Responsible, oops, I went too far here. It goes into my list. I'm going to say Gold 2, that's me. And so Gold 2 is working on this. So in this Action Responsible, if I see that, I'll take this filter off. Now I can see if I'm the other warehouse worker, I can see, hey, wait a minute, Jim, let's pretend that Gold 2 is Jim today. Jim is already working on these orders. There must be a question, so I don't want to work on those. I'm going to leave those alone. So then I can go look at other orders to create shipments and picks. So if you've got multiple people that are planning this activity, the Action Responsible column is a nice feature to signal that you want to wait. So, okay, I do have some questions. So let me handle the questions here, and then we'll see how much time we have remaining. Okay, so does it work in the web client? Well, the answer there is yes, although we still prefer the Windows client. The web client page is a bit more cluttered. Now, I have not seen, and it's not quite available yet, what this looks like in the new Business Central client. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see if maybe the Business Central client is going to be a little less cluttered. So yeah, it still does, but we still like the regular Windows client instead. Oh, great question. Okay, service orders. So the answer on service orders, I believe Mark in the past has told me that stay tuned, that might be something that's coming into it. So I guess the answer as of this moment in this release is not for service orders yet, but stay tuned. It might be coming in an upcoming release. Outbound warehouse request production orders. No, we don't create production orders in outbound warehouse requests. So it doesn't support that as a source document because the production order doesn't have the warehouse entry. So we still create the picks for production orders using the other method, either from a create pick screen, or you can do that in Mac, or if you create the production order pick direct from the production order itself. So sorry, nothing on the production order side here for outbound warehouse requests. Okay, can outbound warehouse requests work with sales orders shipping from multiple locations? Great question. I wasn't sure about this either. In fact, it was an ArcherPoint customer, potential customer, that recently asked me that same question, and I had to go through and test because I didn't know the answer to that myself. So the answer is yes, as long as the ship complete flag is not set on the sales order. If it's ship complete, then we're not going to be able to ship from multiple locations in outbound warehouse requests. And I actually believe that that's a base nav issue as well, but I can't be 100% sure. And of course, some level of warehousing has to be enabled for that to work. Okay, so those are the questions. We actually finished right on time. I probably speeded up my my conversation there.
Great job, Tim.
If there's additional questions, please let me know. My email address, oh, actually, let me go to that last slide here, just in case someone has it. Just a moment. My email address here, jim@lanhamassociates.com. Please feel free to shoot me an email. If you'd like to drill down a little further into additional features, I'm happy to do that, of course. There's a lot more here, but we can't cover it in the hour. So.
Thanks for watching this ArcherPoint video. If you found it helpful, make sure to check out our website and blog at www.archerpoint.com. Additionally, if you have any questions regarding our products, services, or information in this video, feel free to email us at info@archerpoint.com. Thanks.